Woohoo! We are live. First and foremost, my name is Mariah. I am Senior Director of Community here at Backflip, and super excited to be here. In terms of the lay of the land for tonight, y'all submitted questions beforehand, so we've got sort of like specific buckets of questions, themes that Andrew's going to go through. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to experienced investor, Backflip team member, and just overall wonderful human, Andrew. Over to
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Mariah. I appreciate that. That is the best intro I think I've ever received. Hey, everyone. I'm really excited for tonight's Q&A, and thank you again for joining. I'm hoping to live up to that introduction, but happy to answer any questions. There's no dumb questions. I want this to be a laid back, session that, you guys can all take something away from. And then if there's any, if you just want to sit here tonight and listen, I'm happy to connect with you one-off, afterwards, at another time, if there's anything that you want to dive deeper into that wasn't mentioned tonight or that was mentioned tonight. So yeah, we'll kind of take it from there.
Awesome. Here we go.
So some of the questions that I received, that we received beforehand had a lot to do with sourcing deals, how to source opportunities, whether that's, in-state investing, out-of-state investing, finding deals that are good quality and stuff like that. Here is kind of like my high-level philosophy on sourcing deals, right? So my background, just to spend, a couple of seconds on that, is that I currently live in Brooklyn, New York. I invest out of state. I invest in the Charleston County area down there in South Carolina. That kind of happened accidentally. I knew someone who was a contractor. He moved down there, said, "Hey, I'll do your first project for you." And then I ended up establishing a team around me. So very, in the non-conventional way, but it ended up working out for me, right? And so for me, being out of state, there really isn't much for me that differs sourcing out of state versus in state. I would say the two biggest things would be to consider is that, like, I'm just not, when you're out of state, you have to get familiar with that area, right? You need to be able to study that, know that area well enough to want to invest there. And then B, you're just not seeing your property on a weekly basis, which to me is fine. I don't need to see that. I can spend more time doing other things that are revenue generating activities. But to get into sourcing for me, again, in state or out of state, I think there are a couple great ways to do it. Facebook groups are number one for me, without a doubt. When I first started down there and I got connected, that's the first thing I did, was join all of the real estate investing groups that I could down there. I'd connected with as many investors, as many agents, as many wholesalers, anyone that I could, that I thought was going to be a valuable resource for me. That could be, go on Facebook, search, for instance, like Charleston area, real estate, right? There's a big group that comes up, over 4,000 members. And so for me, what that looks like is that when I got started, I said, "Hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm new to investing. This is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking for, single family homes in, such and such zip codes or zip code, to get really specific." And you would be surprised how many wholesalers, how many investors, how many people will DM you and reach out to you to get you on their list, and just to be able to be a resource for you. So I think that that's a really good way to start, is to introduce yourself to, whether it's local Facebook group, whether you're going to be investing, right where you live, or whether you're, hundreds of miles away, in another state. So that was really successful for me. I've been able to grab a handful of deals that way. The last deal I posted in there, I said, "Hey, I'm looking for, this is my buy box, single family that needs work." Within like 3 hours, I had someone who said, "I have this," and I ended up signing a contract less than 24 hours later. So I would say, do not make yourself shy if you're really looking to get quality deals. So that's one. Two, wholesale, email chains. I do get a good amount of leads. Pretty much all my leads are from wholesale deals. I do work, a 9-to-5 job, right? So sourcing properties is not something that I actively do. I'm not actively reaching out to buyers. I'm not skip tracing. I'm not doing anything direct to seller. So a lot of the leads that I'm getting are either on market or they're going to be from wholesalers. So I would say subscribe to as many of those as you can in your area. Like I said, Facebook groups is a great way to start. If you say, "Hey, I'm looking to connect with wholesalers, please PM me or add me to your email chain." They're all going to swarm to you, right? They're all looking for cash buyers. They're all looking for end buyers once they sign a contract. So that's another great way, to get on, to find properties. So I would say definitely get on wholesale email chains. And then kind of to what I just spoke about, I would say, if you are more active and you are looking to take this on as more of a, full-time role, there's, websites like PropStream and Deal Machine, where if you're looking to be more proactive and you're looking to skip trace and reach out directly to sellers and kind of be a little bit more strategic, then those are certainly viable options. I've used them to an extent, but nothing crazy. Because like I said, a lot of the deals I'm just getting sent to me because I don't have the time right now to source them. So I would say those are really my three, the two main ones, and then if you want to be proactive, you can go on sites like PropStream. And then fourth, this takes a little bit more, I would say, proactiveness, right? But you can go to property auctions, tax sales, stuff like that. That is a little bit more work. I would say a little bit more experience on that side as well. I have never been. It is something I would like to potentially, get involved in down the road. But I know that tends to be a popular, way to, get property for heavily discounted, right? So those would be kind of my, avenues that you can explore when you're looking to, start sourcing. All right, I'm going to catch up here. So Maggie, I am going to get to your question. I'm just going to stay on this topic right now. So Connor, did you have a mentor as you were starting? If so, what worked for you? That's a great question. I did have a mentor. So as I mentioned, a friend of mine was a contractor down in Charleston. He was moving with his wife. They had a house down there that they were finishing up. And so once they moved down there, he kind of introduced me to, he had an agent that he worked with, an investor-friendly agent he worked with. He had handyman on deck. And so once I connected with, the agent, his agent, I ended up connecting with. He's the one who I bought my first house with. And now 3 years later, he's actually a partner of mine in an LLC that we buy properties with together. So he's been instrumental in kind of getting me started and showing me the ropes. My greatest piece of advice, and again, this is whether you're out of state or whether you're in state, a lot of that is going to stay the same. It just depends on how proactive you want to be. Like my agent, I would highly suggest the same way that I talked about sourcing properties on Facebook is the same thing that you can do with sourcing people. Hey, I'm looking to connect with contractors. I'm looking to connect with investor-friendly agents who are familiar with this area, who have clients. And once you connect with these people, interview them. Say, hey, like, how many investors do you work with? Like, what are you seeing in this market or over here or over there, whatever that looks like. My mentor for me was my agent, like I talked about, who's now my partner. He really showed me the ropes. He really got me to understand Charleston's, the area itself, and what areas that he saw were the biggest growth opportunities, and which kind of areas that he said, hey, these are kind of priced out right now. And then just all things real estate related. I really had little to no knowledge going into it. I knew that I wanted to get started. I kind of just took the action to do so, but he was a very big part of my success along the way, showing me, from buying my first house, to, like I said, getting to know the area, and just picking up on little things along the way to like where I'm at now, buying properties with him, right? About what to look for in houses, and stuff like that. So that was a big part of my success. I highly recommend, whether that's organically and someone or whether, I kind of fell into that situation like unintentionally. I do highly recommend, if you're looking to get started, like I said, and you're familiar with your area or you're not familiar with your area, learn from someone who has done it before and is continuing to do it, because that's going to be, sort of the best way to really learn. Let's
We've got
see.
some, other great questions coming in. Do you want, I can read it out to you if that works, Andrew. It looks like you were talking about investor-friendly agent. What does that look like exactly? Like, what are some of those interview questions that you would ask an agent?
Yeah, I would say, hey, like, there's a big, I'll be very candid when I answer this question. I think that there's a big, there's a big gap in education with real estate agents today. I think that there's a lot of them that are transactional and they focus on helping a client. A lot of them are buying, or helping clients buy their first time home or selling homes. Very few work with, and when I say investor friendly, it's like, hey, knowing what investors are looking for. Like, does this deal have enough spread? Like, is this a good area? Like, what are the exit strategies here? So a couple of questions that you could ask for like investor friendly agent would be like, do you work with investors? Like, do you have any investments yourself? Right? Like that truly helps as well, because if you're working with an agent who's also an investor, they're going to approach the deal with them, in your shoes. So they're going to be looking at it from a numbers perspective. And that's what really kind of separates investor friendly agents with just regular agents who are just selling homes to first time home buyers or to people who are going to, owner occupy the house. So I would say, like, do you have, properties yourself? Do you work with investors? Like, what does that look like? And really kind of take the conversation from there and get a better understanding as to what their investment experience looks like, and make that clear. Like, hey, I'm an investor. I'm looking to do this. So I need to know, like, are numbers going to work? I'm not approaching this as, there's no emotional attachment to that as it would be if you were an owner occupy. So that's the biggest difference for me in trying to separate out like what those, those agents.
Along those same lines, you briefly like mentioned your buy box when you're sourcing. We got a question around like what is spread. So could you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so when I say spread, I more so mean like, hey, I'm gonna buy it for, the property is $100,000. It's worth, $200,000. Let's say you need $50,000 in rehab. That delta is about 50 grand, right? Now it breaks down a little bit more from there, right? So you're gonna have commission, you're gonna have sellers commissions. I know that now the landscape's changing with the buyers, agents commissions and stuff like that, but you're gonna have to, deduct kind of like where your price is, your all-in price at 150, it can sell for 200, and then that spread is kind of that 50K difference, give or take a little bit, with the commissions being factored into and closing costs and whatnot, and to take into consideration taxes. I do have a good spreadsheet I would like to share. I'm happy to share this with anyone who's on the call today afterwards, that kind of breaks that down for you. It's kind of a plug and play where it shows you like, hey, this is the ARV, this is like the total loan amount, this is the rehab cost, and then that's kind of like what you're going to walk away with after commissions and everything like that. So I still use it. It's instrumental for me today if I'm going to sell, if I'm going to flip as opposed to hold. So I'm happy to share that.
That's awesome. I think so many of our investors do that same thing, right? You go to the app, you go to the Backflip app, you do like that initial gut check when the numbers start to look good, then you go to your spreadsheet and you're like, okay, let's really dive into what that looks like. Cool. Okay, Dustin said, is that good for flips and Burr? Oh, the spreadsheet? I think
Yeah,
that's what he's talking about. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good question, Dustin. I also have one for Burr if I'm going to buy and hold, so I will share both. The one I was referring to before is really just for flips because it's going to show you kind of like what you're going to walk away with. Um, but I have another one that's really good for, Burr as well. So
Cool. Maggie's asking
uh,
about what is a good spread?
yeah, what's a good spread? This is a good question. This is very, very much up to the individual investor, right? There are some people who won't touch deals unless they're going to make a certain amount, like 50K. There are some people who, if you're going to be constantly flipping and this is going to be your full-time profession and you're looking to just churn deals out, you might take a much lower spread. You might take 15 or 20K on a deal. I'll resort back to, that's always going to depend on the investor and what they're looking for, right? For me, a good deal, a good spread would be if I can make 40 or 50K on the sale. That's a really good spread for me. I've taken less sometimes and I've made more sometimes, right? But when I am evaluating my personal situation, that's kind of the box that I sort through.
Awesome.
And then
It's
I'm
good,
seeing
good to see.
Roger, I saw your question about insurance. So I always get a builder's risk policy. That's the one that I have in place for insurance. A lot of times it's just mandatory given the condition of the houses that I'm buying, is that they're not going to qualify for, your regular insurance policies, because, they are, I don't want to say dilapidated, but they are in, pretty bad shape. So I can speak only on my experience, but all the insurance that I get for my houses are just builder's risk because of the improvements that I'm doing to them, throughout the process.
I actually got that question today around like what does backflip require in terms of insurance?
Yes, I can follow up. I don't want to get it wrong off the top of my head, but I
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
can follow up with that question. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Does the lender care about the spread?
That's a really good question. Yes, they do. So, and this is twofold, right? So the lender does care about the spread to protect them and their assets, but the lender also cares about the spread for you as the borrower, right? So on our side, the bare minimum spread is going to be 12% ROI on that. And again, that's to protect not only us, but you as well. If anything does go wrong, that 12%, is figured to be a good number to kind of close that gap.
Yeah, sure. Looks like Ivan was asking about formula. So do you use any type of formula, for example, the 70% rule? He's talking about, getting bids in Chicago and just wants to know if there's any tips on making some good offers.
Yeah, Ivan, that's a really great question. I do like to buy around that 70%. I think I've gone up to 75%, one or two times. I like to stay below if I can, just for extra spread. The short answer to that I have is that it is tough, right? Like there's, the prices of homes are going up, interest rates are making it tough to kind of hit on that, right? So I think it is getting a lot more competitive to find good deals. I would say don't my suggestion that sometimes not buying something is better than buying it and having to deal with it if it's at 80% or if it's above what you're comfortable with. So sometimes not buying a property ends up being in a much better situation. So I would say you keep getting outbid. I would say just keep putting in offers, right? Like as long as it fits that criteria. A lot of investors are going to tell you, I just had this come up in the real estate group that I'm a part of on Facebook, is that a wholesaler was asking like, hey, what are investors looking for right now? Like what is most top of mind for them? And a lot of people were like, hey, I'm not buying above like 65 or 70%. Like that was like the gold standard answer. It's like, hey, if it makes sense at 70%, like I'll buy it. Anything at 70%, I'll buy. That was like a general consensus on that answer. So I would say keep putting in offers. And I wouldn't do anything crazy to try to, you don't want to go up and get a deal, like I said, just to make it work, just because you want to have a project to do. It's much better off if it fits and you're comfortable, in your buy box.
For sure. You talked about out of state. How do you determine if there's a good deal without putting your own eyes on it? Ooh, I'm curious about this.
Yeah, Kristen, that's a great answer. I'm very fortunate enough to have a really good team in place. So I have a contractor that has, pretty much done, all my flips for me. My agent works extremely close. He's kind of like my boots on the ground. He's also my partner, right? So that there's that, obligation from him as well if we're going to do a deal together. But I basically, let's say I'm getting that deal in from a wholesaler and I see it come through, and I'll reach out to, my agent. I'll reach out to my contractor. I'll say, hey, we got to look at this. I'm interested to see your thoughts. My contractor will go over there. I will always have my agent might see it first, but I will always have my contractor go over there for the last set of eyes. Yes, I will. Right now, I'm currently only doing deals where my team is, Chris, and yes, I am looking to expand out hopefully at some point this year, but I'm not quite there yet. I feel like I'm still have a lot of work to do where I currently am. But my contractor, and I recommend this is my opinion, right? My real estate opinion is that if you're a first time investor, if you're looking to do out of state, I would really rely on your contractor. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. At face value, a house may look like it only needs, lipstick and then it's good to go. There could be a lot of things wrong with that under the surface. My contractor is always giving me a quote. I always know exactly what to expect going into a project that I'm going to make an offer on. I know exactly the line item. I know exactly the rehab that's needed because he's seeing it. He's giving it to me. He's like, this is the quote to do this. Am I looking to flip it? Am I looking to rent it? That's going to depend on the scope of rehab. But I always know going into it what that looks like. And then I add a 10 to 15% contingency on top of that in case that there's anything unforeseen, that comes up, which I always recommend as well. So that's how I determine. I rely based on, hey, to kind of answer your question full, if the property is $100,000 and it needs $30,000 worth of rehab, and I can sell it for $200,000 plus, and my contractor saw it and he signed off on it and he gave me a quote and it checks the box, boom, I know it's going to be a good deal. And that's kind of rinse and repeat, right? And that's been proven for me to have worked so far. So that's kind of the formula that I stick with.
Love that. We had a couple other sourcing questions, and then I think we wanted to also just hop in around ARVs and showing the app. So y'all, while we're in this like sourcing, part of the program, feel free to keep asking questions about it. Andrew, do you want to hop into quick demo? Give people
Yeah.
a view of like how you use Backflip before and now while you're on the team?
Yeah, absolutely. And right before I do that, Dustin, I'm looking at straight in the face, so I want to answer it. Backflip does not require the funds to be seasoned. And we also do allow gap lenders in the second position. So that is just a very quick, high level answer to your question. Do you do inspections prior to contract? So we'll do appraisal on the property prior to, to get the as is value and to get the ARV. This ensures that we're on the same page, and that, we are covered as well in case the ARV comes in much lower than expected, or anything like that, that can throw the deal off, numbers wise.
I love all these questions, y'all. This is
Yeah,
great.
these are really great questions. All right, let me do this. Let
Let's
me
do
share
it.
my screen.
I also want to preface just by saying that our product team has been working super hard. For those of y'all who have been with us for a hot minute, you have seen the app go through some iterations. For those that are new, excited for you to get your feedback on this as well. But this is our first time showing the brand new app launch. It's live in Android. It's going to be live in iPhone tomorrow. So this is kind of a sneak peek. Andrew, look at you go.
I'll try not to mess this up. I am getting familiar with the new model, everyone. I'll give you guys a heads up. But yeah, so as Mariah mentioned, this is the new app. And to just take it a step back, I will say when I was sourcing, I used a couple hard money lenders before for a couple deals before Backflip. But what really caught my attention with Backflip, and the reason why I liked it so much as a lender, was that they made it incredibly easy to, view properties, apply for a loan on the app. I believe we're the only lender with an app like this. So that just separated us even more. And it was just incredibly easy if a deal came through to me to be able to go in here, analyze it, and not just analyze it, but also apply for a loan as well if I wanted to, just to kind of see what that term sheet looked like and what my numbers would be. So I fell in love with it the first time I used it, and now I'm on this side of things. So I might be a little biased, but I will say when I was sitting in your position, this is kind of, how I walked through it. So, you know, for you guys who have used the old app before, you'll notice a little bit different in that these are now boxes as opposed to being laid out like this, but all still the same things involved. So what I will say here is, I'll go to, if we're looking to analyze properties, and I just want to, let's see. So you can type in, I believe I remember my address. Let's see if I type this in. So I had one property I wanted to, I believe it was this one. Let's see.
So this is the beta version, right? So this is it's going to take a little bit longer because it's on the inside, but tomorrow it will be live. So
Yes,
exciting.
exactly. Oh, I screwed up the numbers. Give me 1 second, guys. I apologize. 23, 22.
This could be fun too if at the end we have a little extra time. If someone has an address that they want to do, we could do it all together. See if we come back close to what the numbers they got too. I always love doing that.
I know. I always like to see that as well. All right, let's see. So, okay, so perfect. So this house is currently on market. It's in the market that I buy in North Charleston, right? So for me, the purchase price, 184,000. Now, I'll say coming from me, I already know that it's too high for me to buy as is because I've bought a lot of properties around this exact one. But what I will say is just kind of showing you guys at a high level overview, like how I would evaluate this deal if, I wasn't sure that it was in this area, is that you'll see here that it's laid out the comps, estimated ARV right off the bat is almost spot on. It's around that 250 to 260 mark as is if I left it as a 3-1, which you'll see right underneath the address. It'll have 3 beds, 1 bath, 892 square feet, built in 1944, right? So there's a couple components to this that I really like, where the biggest one that I see, so you'll see here, we select the first 3 comps for you based on a lot of it's going to be based on like the distance. A lot of it's going to be based on like sold date. You can sort all through that distance: sold date, square foot, sold price, year built, square feet. Our pick's going to be generated by what the app feels are the best comps. But the cool thing about this is that you guys can sub in and sub out these comps, right? So like if you're scrolling and you really know the area, you can say, hey, maybe 2655 Harvey right here is a better comp, and I'm going to add that one in. You can add up to 5 comps, right? So I'm going to add that one in, and now it's going to completely skew, right? It lowers that ARV a little bit based on that comp. I can pull in, I can take out, I can use up to 5, I can use 1, I can use 2. It really is up to you guys. And like I said, you can sort by distance, sold date, price per square feet, etc. And the cool thing is, one of the best features I think of the app is that it will show you the distance to, like, the comps, the subject property, right? So as you would in an appraisal report. So the first one, 2236 Bailey Drive, is 0.2 miles away from the subject property that we're comping. I love that on Zillow, and I still sometimes will check my ARVs on Zillow. So I don't want to throw them under the bus. I do like Zillow, but Zillow is annoying because you can only draw a circle around, the area that you're looking to search for, and you don't exactly know how far that circle goes out in terms of radius. So here it's giving you the exact distance, and this is exactly what you would see on an appraisal report that comes back. It's like, hey, these are the subject properties, and they are within 0.2, 0.4, 0.5 miles away, from that. So that's what I really like about that. And then if we go in, to calculate, right, it's like, hey, it's going to give you 2 options, right? Are you looking to fix and flip this deal, or are you looking to rehab and rent? And those numbers will ultimately be a little bit different. And this is where I say do your own due diligence on that, because sometimes, we're not going to pick up, up to market rent. So maybe we don't know that it's going to rent for a certain amount. So you'll see, like, if you're going to rehab and rent it, minus 514, poor deal. I would say it's all going to be kind of contingent on your market and, what those rents are. But basically, you can all go through here, go through the numbers. Purchase price, the estimated ARVs 249, the estimated rehab cost, let's just say generates at 26,000. I do want to stop here real quick and say I will get, I'll talk to a lot of borrowers on a weekly basis, and a lot of them say, hey, is the estimated rehab cost that the app generates, like, how do they come up with that number? That is basically just that is a number that's set in place that is not meant to be taken at face value, because the app does not know the condition of the property or what that's in, right? So I would say always double check, like, never rely just on the $26,000, right? This property might need $40,000 and might need $80,000, right? I would say that's just a number that kind of populates. Always do your own due diligence with that. That's what I tell borrowers who come to me and ask me, is really, if you're going to go through here and just say, oh, your app said that it needed 26,000, always rely on, your own doing, to justify, like, what that rehab cost is.
Quick, I'll add too, I was talking to our product team and they said that it's based on $30 per square foot for that, right? So that was sort of an average, but again, that varies so wildly across markets that, $30 per square foot doesn't pertain to all. That's just sort of like give you a baseline.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And so this is pretty much where you're going to see, based on this, you can actually kind of see, and this is what I really like about the new app, kind of what you're estimated. Now, this is going to be an estimate. Whenever someone submits a loan app through here, it's always going to go to someone on, to me or someone on my team who is going to run you a more formalized term sheet. But this is kind of where you can get a high level understanding of, like, hey, what that cash to close might look like, right, in this type of situation, at the financing that's below, right? And this is subject to change. A lot of that can be dependent on credit. A lot of that can be dependent on what your experience is. A lot of that can be dependent on the total loan amount, right? Stuff like that. So I would just take that into consideration when you're seeing this. But yeah, and then from here, comping and analyzing properties, another cool feature here, going back here, is you'll see in the top right hand corner the pencil icon. So if I click on that, you can then take a look, like, hey, I'm going to make this a 3-2 afterwards, right? And then you can change out those beds and baths, and then you can only specifically pick the properties, like, hey, Bailey Drive is a 3-2. Select that one. I only want to look at 3-2s because I'm going to change this one. I'm going to convert it from a one bath to a 2-bath, right? So you can that's where that feature is really cool in substituting out if you only want to look at like properties with the same exact, bed and bath count.
Awesome. We did get a question about how useful are comps in non-disclosure states, like in Texas. First thing I'll say on that is around, where we get our data. So we work with partnered providers, that pull from MLS, title companies, and public record data. So it's not just like one source. And we are able to get data that, might not be available in typical non-disclosure states. So that's where that's coming from. Andrew, if you had any other like thoughts around that, happy to have you add. But yeah, comps are obviously getting access to those is wildly helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think that's a great answer. Um, Let me see. This is a good question. Tina, are comps apples to apples, like brick, to brick versus siding? It's not going to be as just like any appraisal report will have, is that they may, show that the brick house is going to be worth X amount more than someone on vinyl siding or asbestos siding or anything like that. So we're going to just give you the comps that were sold, and you can kind of decide in and out from yourself, like, hey, this is not, they're both 3.2s, but this one is, brick compared to, vinyl. They're going to put more weight on this. And that's exactly how an appraisal report will have that, kind of, weight distributed right throughout the subject property. So that's my high level, answer to that.
Cool.
Bob, what is leverage? So when I say leverage, let me go back there and discuss that a little bit. So leverage is going to be your loan to cost, right? How much are we going to fund as a company, right? So leverage here, 81%. We always fund 100% of the rehab project. That is a non-negotiable on our end, so we have to. So if you think that the rehab is going to be 50K, we will fund the full 50K in disbursements and rehab draws. But then the purchase price is where that leverage comes into play. How much based on the app that you submitted, the property, your experience, your credit score, how much are we going to fund on the purchase, which ultimately plays a factor in, what that cash to close will be on your end. So very high level overview. That's what I mean when I say leverage.
Quick follow-up question to that, I think speaks to this as well, is do you work with first-time investors? If yes, what's the LTV?
So, sorry, Mariah, say that again.
Yeah. Do you work with first-time investors? If yes, what's the LTV?
Yes, we do work with first-time investors. We have a ton of first-time investors that we work with. LTV is going to be that's tough to answer. Again, the variables in that will be, what does your credit score look like, right? The loan size does have can play a factor in that. Another thing that a lot of people don't know until they submit a loan is that another factor that can the LTV is going to be up to 75%, but in terms of LTC, sorry, I think I was getting that confused for a second. In terms of LTV, we will fund up to 75%. But in terms of LTC, and I do get this question a lot, so I'll kind of piggyback on that, is that if your rehab amount, like let's say your property that you're buying is $150,000, but the property needs $100,000 worth of work, the more that the scales, the more that those are closer together and the more that the rehab as a percentage of the as is value is higher, that's also going to skew, what we're able to fund as well. So while we are able to fund those higher rehab projects that are, let's say $100,000 purchase and needs $100,000 and afterwards it'll be worth 300, while we do fund those and we don't, we can go backwards on that as well. If the rehab's higher than the purchase, it will skew how much of it we're able to fund, from a lending side. So I do want to throw that out there and not to confuse anyone, but I do get asked that a decent amount just as, speaking with borrowers on a weekly basis. So there's a lot of things that play, that are at play when looking to see, like, it's not just one number, off the top that I can say, oh, this is going to be, first time investor, this is what we're going to be able to give you. It's a little bit deeper than that.
Yeah, looks like we're getting a lot of like loan type questions. Can you show us like really quickly on the app? I love how easy it is to submit
Yeah.
loans. So yeah, I would love to see that too.
Yeah, that's a great segue. So I would say go here to get a loan right on the bottom right-hand corner. You'll say, who's going to be the borrower of the loan. If we do both personal name and we do LLC, we do prefer closing in an LLC, but we will close in a personal name as well. So let's say you have an LLC set up. because I assume that that might have been a question. We do lend on both. Let's say, the entity name is, ABC, LLC, right? Something like that. Next, how many properties have you flipped in the last 3 years? So this is how we verify experience. All hard money lenders will do this to see like, hey, are we working with a new first time investor? Are we working with someone who's experienced? Terms will vary based on those and based on that experience level. So let's say, for the sake of this, we'll go, 0 to 1. I'll press that. How many rentals have you owned in the last 3 years? Let's say, 0 to 1. What is your estimated cash available? I do like that we have this feature now. That's something that, you can put, let's say 0 to 25K. And that just gives us a good idea as to like when we're talking with you about the term sheet. It's like, hey, what was your expectation? Like, what's available to you, right now? Estimated credit score. So 640 is the minimum to be on a loan, on our, for us. So, anything 640 or above, you can be on the loan. So let's say it's, between 670 and 690. What is your contract status? I'll get, applications that are under contract and are looking for funding. They are looking to make an offer on. So there's no real way, you do not have to be under contract to submit an offer. And you do not have to be seriously considering the property to make an offer as well. There's a lot of first-time investors, and I know I'm speaking a lot to the first-time investor, but a lot of first-time investors just want to understand like, hey, where will I be for a property that's in my buy box, right? 100,000, for a purchase price, 20, 30K for rehab, worth this much. Like I'll send term sheets a ton to people who, just kind of want to see where they're at when it comes to, what is going to be required of them to close and what terms they can get. So I just want to make that clear. You do not have to be under contract. You do not have to be putting in an offer to get a term sheet. I'm happy to talk with you just about, I'm happy to run a mock term sheet for you on a deal if you want to just kind of see where you fall, based on, what you have available to you. But let's say, I'm 1 to 2 weeks away. I've made an offer and I'm waiting to hear back, right? That's kind of what that time frame looks like. Desired closing date. Just as a heads up, we typically allow for about 14 business days to close a loan, right? That gives our processing team enough time for the underwriting and to work out all of the paperwork. So let's say, 14 business days. Let's say, what is it? The 10th. Let's say we're going to go with the 25th, right? Borrower of the loan. You're going to, double check everything. Next, this is going to be based on the, how I had get a loan. I was already in the property address. So it's going to say get a loan based on the information that was already there, right? So this is going to ask you for like your expected hold period. So all of our loans right now are 12-month loans with no prepayment penalty on them, right? So you have 12 months to pay the loan back if you're looking to sell within that time frame, if you're looking to refinance out within that time frame, and there's no prepayment penalty. So doing so sooner is more advantageous to you, to get out of that, quicker. So let's say hold period is 6 months. Next, this is going to give you kind of a high level overview, a summary of what you had put in. Leverage, the 81%, total loan amount 171, interest rate 12%, payment 1,700, financing fees, it's going to include the origination. And then you go here to submit a non-binding application. And let's say this was routed, to me personally, I would take a look at this. I'd give you guys a call and I'd say, hey, let's go over the term sheet to see, where we are and, ask you if you had any questions on anything, further. So that's kind of the whole process from start to finish, from analyzing a property, submitting a loan could be as easy, as quick as, 2 or 3 minutes. And then, talking to, a member of our team about what those terms look like.
Cool. I love that. I mean, it's just like more power and like, knowledge is power, right? So just getting that in your hands is super valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw
Cool.
one
We're
come through.
we're getting tons of questions. So thanks, y'all.
Yeah, DB, what is the status of this is a touchy subject. What is the status of getting approved to lend in California? It's a great question. We are currently we're actively working on that license. I don't have a time frame for you yet. I don't want our legal team to get mad at me for spewing out a wrong answer. So I don't have timeline for you yet, but we are actively working on that. to get licensed there. So as soon as that will definitely be, a big announcement for us, the day that we are approved to lend in California.
So excited.
Yep.
I saw one too that talked about closing and holding costs. Can they be wrapped into the loan?
Yes. So we do have a product for that. It's called our zero gravity product. I would say let's connect offline a little bit further about that. I'll give you a high level overview. That product, basically what it does is that it wraps up, and I don't want to confuse anyone for not looking at a term sheet. Like, I've memorized a term sheet, but it basically has origination fees, underwriting fees, the appraisal, and like legal document and prep fees. And then it wraps that as well as 6 months of payments into the loan, right? So the only thing that you're going to come to the table with is the percentage of the purchase price that we're not funding. So let's say that's up to 75%. You have to come up with 25% down payment, and then that's your only closing cost, is that equity in the house. Everything else is wrapped up into the total loan amount. That product is specifically really good for investors who are looking to, they may have a couple projects going on already and they don't have to worry about cash flow. One less property for them to worry about a payment every month. That's really where that product kind of, came into play. And that pain point that we were trying to solve there. But happy to go a little bit deeper into that, to actually look at numbers, offline.
Yeah, quick follow-up on that. One, I think everyone should take advantage of Andrew offering that. Like, definitely reach out to him. I'll post his email so that you can actually like get one-on-one answers. And then secondarily, we are recording this. So I see a couple folks who's directed message us saying that they wanted to catch up. This will be recorded and shared in a follow-up email. So you will get that information as well. And then schedule time with Andrew. But yeah, let's go back into the questions. There was one about min and max for loan amounts.
Yes, that's a great question. So our I'm going to say this at a high level. So our minimum purchase price requirement is $85,000. Our minimum loan amount is 75K. So when I first heard that, I was confused starting out. So I'll kind of break it down. Is that the purchase price has to be 85K. The total loan amount has to be 75K. So if you purchase a property for 85K and it only needs $10,000 worth of rehab, and we're only funding, like, let's say 78% or 74% of the purchase price, then that's where that might dip down below that 75K mark. But I've never seen that. Generally, as long as the purchase price is 85K, it will meet that 75K loan minimum. And then maximum right now, our total loan amount is about 1.5 million.
That'd be fun to do a flip of that size. Which I know we've done some really big ones. So awesome. Okay, does Backflip fund both on market and off market properties?
Yes. Yep. I would say majority of the properties that we're funding they are probably off market deals. So we fund both.
Awesome.
Sure.
Can someone be listed on the operating agreement without being a member of the LLC?
That is a good question. I believe it all has to match up. So I believe whoever is on the operating agreement, or however way that was worded, has to be a member of the LLC, because one of the things that we'll ask you for if you are closing in the LLC, we are asking you for like your EIN number, your articles of organization, your operating agreement, certificate of good standing, stuff like that. So I believe those do have to match up, but that is a question more so for the processing team that I can get you a better answer on.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Cool. Oh my gosh, we've had so many good questions. Andrew, is there anything else we wanted to show, or anybody else have questions on the app itself? There are a million other cool features in the app, but just wanted to check, is there any more questions about that? And then we can jump into, like, we've got tons of questions about funding and rehab and all that.
I'll say low-hanging fruit here, piggybacking on Maggie real quick. I'm just looking at it. I'm assuming you mean zero gravity, Maggie. That loan is not offered to first-time investors. So that requires 2+ projects, to have done.
Cool. All right, Andrew, any other things you want to show us on the app? My leads.
Yeah, I would say one of the other things that I did want to show, my leads function, which is awesome. So basically what my leads is that it's going to connect your email address. It's got to be Gmail account. It's going to connect the leads that you're getting. So for me, I'm on endless amount of wholesale chains. And I get, if you know Gmail like I do, you'll have a promotions tab, you'll have a social tab, you'll have your inbox. Like deals are going everywhere. Sometimes they go to spam because they don't know. So what this does is this filters your inbox and it pulls all the deals into this leads list for you. So let's say you have deals set up on Zillow, alerts set up on Zillow, right? Realtor, Redfin, wholesale deals, anything that's coming through that's property related to your inbox, my leads will pull it through to this list where you can sort and filter all of your leads in one place, which is really awesome to me because, like I said, I'm always scrambling in my inbox looking for things. Sometimes, I'll come here and there are properties I didn't even know that I've received because they're just lost in translation, right? So this is, the power of this, and this is what's really awesome about the new tool that we have in my leads. You can set up your buy box, right? So your buy box would be like, hey, I only want to see properties with a purchase price of, max, let's say max, let's go to, 200,000, right? And then ARV, you can set that to, 350, right? Let's say, I don't use the profit because I want to kind of make that judgment myself. So that's not one thing that I set. Again, I think that, that's, going to be up to you entirely. You can go based on year built. There are people who I know, investors who will not buy anything, let's say later than 1950, that has to do with, asbestos, has to do with lead, has to do with all the building supplies that they used back then that, can flag in an inspection and kind of make it a little bit more difficult, to deal with that rehab process. So, year built is certainly, a very good one. Bed count, bath count, and square footage, right? Stuff like that. So this is basically going to take all of this and say like, hey, I'm going to search, this, and this is my buy box, right? So you'll have an all page and then you'll have a buy box. So all will be any lead that comes in, and your buy box will be, what I just sorted by up to 200K purchase price, ARV I did not set, but let's say it's set, to 350, stuff like that. And this is going to be all, everything in here I can guarantee you is in my inbox somewhere. All these properties coming in, you'll see sometimes like, Charleston, you'll see one, before was in Ohio. I'm part of specific wholesale groups. I'm part of nationwide groups. Sometimes I'll get deals in, Wisconsin. I'm not investing in Wisconsin, but that same wholesaler will also send me deals in Charleston, right? So it's kind of I want to be as wide as possible, in my reach with receiving properties. So that's kind of why that is the way it is. So that's basically what my leads is. You'll have to register, you'll have to sync it. So it'll just ask for your permission to hook up to your Gmail. One question that we do get a lot, we are not looking to analyze your inbox. We do not want anything else in your email. It's just going to be property related. So we are not looking to steal information or anything like that. This is specifically for deals to kind of, aggregate through, to the app so that you can sort them, in this manner.
Awesome. Cool. Amazing. All right. Well, are there any other, I'll leave like 2 more minutes. If there are any other questions, like specifically on the app, we will answer those in real time. Then we'll take it off our shared screen and go back into funding questions. Couple other like high level things I would say we talked about in the beginning, but you can see right here, there is that little like share button. So if you want to share it with your realtor, if you want to share it with your partner, if you want to share it with, whoever is relevant in making that deal happen, you can actually just like send it to them directly. So I would encourage y'all to do that. And yeah, just play around the app. We're a startup, so we're always looking for your feedback. We built the app specifically with investors. So if you have feedback, yeah, we're always open to that. And we'll continue to build things that make your life better and easier. So awesome. Okay, so now let's jump back in. Let's jump into some of these funding. There were a lot of funding questions that were submitted, Andrew. So you're in the hot seat. Okay, cool. Dallas was asking specifically around, I mean, it's basically like talking about necessary cash before placing a bid on a property, and can Backflip provide any assistance? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll speak to this the best way that I can. I've dealt with I've dealt with borrowers who come to us, so it's kind of twofold. It's a great question, by the way. I would say there's a lot of people who will buy cash for the property. Now, it seems like this may not pertain the way that your answer is framed, but I'll say this. One option is people buy cash. They buy these properties at the auction in cash, and then what they'll do is that we can refinance afterwards and refinance that loan with us with a rehab loan associated, right? So we'll do like a refi rehab loan to that property. It's already paid off as long as it appraises for 85K or higher. That's what a lot of people will do just so that they can get the property. If cash is not available to you, let's say you can't buy the property in cash at the auction. A lot of times it depends on the auction. I actually just, a borrower that I spoke with last week is under, we're funding. Their auction allowed 30 days to get funding for the property. So that's where we can come into play. If the auction is looking for like, hey, right then and there, like you need to submit payment and you need to kind of close on that, that's not something that we can really accommodate just based on the closing timeline. So it seems like, it's either you can pay cash for it, refinance out with us with a rehab loan. You can, depending on the auction, 30 days out, if they're allowing, that to happen, then we can certainly make that, we can certainly accommodate that. And then there's also that kind of in between, which I think you might be stuck in, Dallas, unfortunately, where if it has to be then and there and you can't pay cash for it, it's tough because there's not enough time for us to, underwrite the deal and close that out. So that's kind of my high level, answer for that.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a private money situation. But yeah, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Awesome. Dustin was asking about, I've received a lot of deals from realtors, but they're clearly uneducated on costs associated. How do you find realtors who can send you deals that actually pencil and also bring them consistently? I
Yeah,
like that.
it's a really great question. I think it kind of goes back to, and I don't mean to, reiterate this or answer it in the same way, but it goes back to kind of what I was saying in, the beginning of the call. There are agents who, excuse me, there are agents who are really, investor friendly and they'll know what investors are looking for because they're either investors themselves or they deal with a ton of investors for them. Unfortunately, that's just something that you'll have to ask. I would say finding like in these real estate groups, there's a ton of agents in these groups as well, right? Because they're looking to expand on their clientele, and one way to expand is to work with investors. It's a repeatable business model, and if you sell a house to someone who's going to own or occupy, that's one deal that you may have another, you may have a relationship with them, but they're not going to, that's one and done for the most part. Obviously, opening up to investors, you're going to get the repeat business. So there are a lot of agents in those Facebook groups. I would say that can help you with that, right? And I think that that's Bigger Pockets is also, they're a partner to us. Bigger Pockets is an unbelievable resource for anything that has to do with real estate investments. I also highly suggest going on that platform as well. There's going to be that community is willing to help out anyone. So that's also a really good resource to use as well for just general, whether that's questions about lenders, whether it's questions about markets, whether it's questions about, what do people look for when screening tenants, like anything that's related. Bigger Pockets is a great forum to use for that. But I would just say, Dustin, kind of to bring it, full circle is, I would just keep talking to agents, and unless they're, unfortunately, this is kind of like the way that it is with them. It's really, kind of dime a dozen to find one who's really, really focused on numbers and knows what, investors, want. So I would just keep hammering at those groups and just, kind of see, just kind of weave them out, at this point.
Yeah, it looks like Joshua responded as well, basically saying talk to more agents, interview them. I love what you said in the beginning, Andrew, around like asking them, are they an investor as well? Some of our, top most experienced backflippers are both realtors and investors. Like that's such a cool skill set to have. And you can always reach out to, the backflip team as well. We've got connections. So if you'd like to reach out to us, you can do that as well. Obviously I'll leave my email and Andrew's at the end, but cool.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Joshua. I 100% agree with that. I think it's not gonna, it could be quick. It might be the long game, but it could take a long time to kind of find, a realtor that, fits, what you're looking for, and, one that really wants to work with you and, your investments. So
It's all about relationships, right? Like just building good relationships with people. Um, cool. Okay. So I live in a low cost of living part of the country. Getting a purchase price of less than 85K is doable and increase the spread. Is Backflip available for these types of investments?
yeah, that's another great question. Um, Currently, no, unfortunately. And I feel your pain. I get a ton of applications that parts of the Midwest, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, those types of markets where cash flow is way up. Purchase prices, are down in that 50, 60, 70K range, Stacy. So right now, that is a hard minimum on our side. I will say, from what I've heard, we are looking to kind of, change that a little bit and see how, I don't know what that minimum loan amount is going to look like, but there are talks about decreasing that to a certain number, maybe 50K, maybe 60K. So I will say stay tuned for that, because that, is something that we see. Like, we do miss out on a good amount of business because, of that minimum, but it all has to do with, the backside of things, and, who, the loans are going to and whatnot. And, majority of lenders do have that minimum in place because, it's universally, known that it's tough to get rid of those really small loans. So that's a really high level answer, but I would say TBD on that, on when that might be. But I'm hopeful that we'll bring back a smaller minimum, coming up.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Okay. DB, how about a Backflip Facebook group? Love it. Yeah, we do currently have a Backflip Texas group. So if you're in Texas, we've got a ton of folks down there. So we've got that. Our eventual goal is really to be able to have this community all live together on the app, sort of as the virtual home base, and then expand out from there, obviously, for our local events as well. So yeah, but if y'all have interest in having a specific like Backflip Facebook group that would include whole country, that is something that we've looked into as well. So love to see the interest in it. And agree, connecting with other investors is a huge value add. Cool. Okay, so continue to ask questions around funding. Andrew, were there any other pre-submitted questions you wanted to answer specifically in the funding area, or should we move into sort of the rehab budgeting part?
Yeah, I would say the one question that came up a decent amount. I'm not going to get too heavily involved in it, but it might apply to, some of the, people who are still on the call, is, kind of financing with, like, no credit, low or no, on hand capital, and kind of what that looks like. My biggest opinion of that is that, hard money will not be your first option and should not be your first option. There's a lot of creative financing, opportunities out there these days, subject to assumable mortgage, stuff like that, where may not require like that credit check or a ton of capital to raise to do a deal. So I would say, also wholesaling is a great way to get, to start making money. There's a lot of people who, real estate, the overarching theme I've learned in the short amount of time that I've been doing real estate, is that it's not a one size fits all, right? If you were to ask, if there were 10 different, days, and, people from 10 different people from my company were in my same seat, you would probably hear many different answers as to like what their opinions of that is, right? So you'll see wholesaling, a common theme with wholesaling is that a lot of people get started to make money there so that they can scale up and start buying properties with, those profits. So that is a question that kind of came up a lot, surrounding that and gap funding, and stuff like that. So I would say wholesaling is a great way to start, but I would not, I would probably look to do something more creative financing wise if I, didn't have established credit and I did not have too much, cash on hand, to do a deal, or, look into in arm's length, like look to family members, stuff like that. That's a really common way people get started. There's that joke about, oh, you have to have a rich uncle, as a private lender, stuff like that. While that might be true, that is definitely something that that people do, right? So that's kind of like my direct answer, to those questions.
Andrew, this time has just flown by. I looked up at the clock and realized, oh my gosh, we need to start wrapping it up. I know quite a few folks asked, what has been your biggest lesson learned? So I'd
Yeah.
love if you could, as our kind of last wrap up of the night, what has been or have been multiple of your biggest lessons learned?
Yeah, and there have been multiple for sure. So,
Yeah.
one, when I got into this, I didn't really fully research and understand all the different investment strategies that I just spoke about, right? So, I did not know what creative financing was. I was really only into it. I did not know what hard money was. I, really only went. My first property I bought was actually through a conventional loan, and I paid out of pocket for the rehab cost, right? Would never do that again. It was a lesson learned, and it's a good lesson to learn, right? Your first flip, your first rehab project, your first rental, it's not going to go perfect, right? And I think that's why that stops a lot of people from getting into real estate, is that they expect that it needs to go, you know, everything needs to be perfect, and you don't learn anything, that way. And so I'm still learning. I've done deals. I just did, my 10th deal, 2 weeks ago, where I'm still learning things, on that project as well. So it really just it I would say, learn as much as you can, but also don't be afraid to kind of just do it. I think that that's the best, in my opinion, that's the best way to learn, is to go through it. And definitely don't get held back because you think that, you can't make a mistake. You're going to make a mistake. I'd say that's a resounding, the more and more people I've talked to in real estate, the resounding answer to that is like, hey, how badly, someone messed up their first deal compared to where they are now, or the lessons, learned for that. So that would be my first lesson for that. Two would be, and this is a big one that I've learned, being indecisive on whether I wanted to flip or rent the property during rehab. I think that a lot of people get caught up in this, is that, there's two very different outcomes, in my opinion, for the scope of work, whether I'm going to buy a property to rehab and rent, and whether I'm going to buy a property to rehab and sell. You're looking at different finishings. You're looking at higher end items that are going in, to that property if you're looking to flip it. The scope of work just changes, and I've gone back and forth on a couple where I'm like, I'm going to hold it. No, I'm going to sell it. Drives my contractor crazy. It doesn't help me out at all. There's no clear plan there, so that can get a little messy. So I would say have a good plan. If your plan is to hold a rental, stick to that plan. If you want to flip it, if the rental comes out really well, and at the end of the project, you're like, hey, you know, I was thinking this was going to be a rental the whole time, came out better than expected, then you can kind of look to pivot if you want to sell it. But I would say stick with the plan all the way through, and don't go back and forth on that. I've learned that that's a pain in the ass, and it doesn't do anyone any good. Um,
Uh,
not
love it.
budgeting not budgeting enough when I first got started was also a big one as well. I did my first one. I was funding out of pocket. That was, that was scary, because it kind of, there's always going to be things, I didn't budget enough for this, thought that this was going to be, a little bit easier or not as much. So I would say always, like I said before, 10 to 15% of a contingency is what I use going into all of my flips, even though my contractor has walked it sometimes multiple times and has laid out a nice list. I will always leave that for, a contingency budget. So, yeah, those are just a few, top
Just a
lessons that I would
few.
say
Yeah.
that I've learned, throughout this journey. So,
Awesome. Well, we just keep getting the questions coming in, so there's clearly a lot of demand, and really appreciate your candid feedback, Andrew. This has been amazing. In terms of next steps for everyone, I mean, first and foremost, if you haven't already downloaded the Backflip app, please go ahead and do that. Utilize that. Get as much info as you can. Start to submit applications. Andrew will be, reaching out to you, and you guys can talk one-on-one about your specific, questions and situation that you have. As really a true partner in your investments. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we do these twice a month. So, hopefully we'll see you at the next one. I encourage everyone to get as much, education and access to the community as possible. And lastly, I can't help but say just huge thank you, Andrew, to you for sharing your expertise, your thought leadership. And can't wait to hear more from you. Clearly, we need to bring you back for an encore, a second one of these. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
no, thank you, Mariah, for setting up. This is awesome. Joshua, I just read that. Thank you very much. That means a lot to us. We really appreciate that. And Dallas, thank you so much. And to everyone else, who joined tonight. And like
Yeah.
Mariah said, I'm available. I can geek out about this, 24/7. So please reach out to me. You do not need to be submitting a loan to reach out to me. I want to just connect with you from,
Totally.
an investment standpoint. So just please don't think that, this has to be associated with, I'm trying to sell you a loan. Just, happy to pick my brain, and I learn a lot, a lot of stuff, and, just talking with, borrowers all the time. So
Totally.
thank you guys again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Andrew's email's in the chat, so reach out to him. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you guys.
Bye.